What you are looking at right now is a typical screen of a mobile application. It's a Google Play app. And in a typical app, we see many things like text and icons. Then these are buttons, these are images, and images can contain other buttons and text and etc. This is a bottom navigation bar which you can click to navigate to other screens. So all these are user elements, we can say. So this text over here, this is an user element or user interface, this icon, this button. So a typical screen of a mobile application can consist of lots of user elements, and the most common user elements are text, buttons, and images. Also we have list views and so on. So in Compose, that the library you are using for building our user interface, we can create our user elements by using composable functions. So if we want to show a text on the screen, then we need a function, a composable function. If we want to show a button on the screen, then we need to have another composable functions. So everything in Compose is function, and this function will be converted to a user element. So what is a composable function? So composable function is actually a function just like any normal function in Kotlin, but with some special features. And this is a typical format for a composable function. So since it's a function, it will always start with this fun keyword followed by the function name. And you see, for composable functions, the function name should start with capital letter, and the function name should be a noun. You should not start with an adjective like do work or paint image, something like that. It should be a noun. And this function can take parameters, and also this function should have an annotation at the top of the function. We have to put an annotation, and we have to use this special prefix character at the rate, and this is an annotation. And annotations are simply some special instruction to the compiler that actually provides some extra information how to take these data into consideration and render the UI. So the last thing about this composable function is that this function must not return anything. That means this function should always return unit. So our composable functions will not ever return an int or a string or integer or any other type. So it will always return a unit. So in summary, a composable function is a function that is annotated with composable, and whenever this function is called, our Compose compiler will understand that this function is a special one, and this function will be used to generate a user interface on the screen, and this function should not return anything, and this function will take parameters. We can pass string or integer. It actually depends what data we want to show on our screen. And normally every composable functions take a modifier as a default parameter, and I will talk about this modifier in later lectures. So now let's go back to our main activity.kt file, and inside this main activity.kt file we are looking at a few composable functions. So this hello compose theme, it's also a composable functions. This surface is also a composable functions. This greeting over here, which is defined here, is also a composable functions. This text over here, also a composable functions. Remember, whenever we want to show something on our screen, we want a composable functions, and our starter project shows as text on the screen. That's why we need these text composable functions. But not all composable functions come as a built-in. For example, this greeting composable, it is created for us, but this text composable and this surface composable, these two composable functions are actually built in the compose library. We didn't create that, or Android Studio didn't create these composable functions. It is actually coming from the library. And one thing that I actually forgot to mention when we created this project by using the compose template, for example, if I go back new and new project, so whenever we choose this template, many things are already set for us. For example, if we go to the Gradle escapes, and if we just open this second Gradle file which says module app, so normally we have two Gradle files, one for the entire project and one for the module, this app module over here. So if we open that, and then inside this file, you see that we have the compile SDK version 34, we have the minimum SDK version 24 that we set earlier, the target SDK version is 34. Normally the target and compile SDK version should be equal and the latest one. And also we have the version code, the version name, and if we scroll down a little bit, and let me find the, okay, so this build features section over here, you say compose true. So this is by default. When you choose that template, this build features section is already added, this compose true, that actually enables compose library in our project. And also this Kotlin compiler extension version, which is 1.5.1, it is also included by the template. So if you have an existing Android project that you have built with the old way, that means with the XML files without compose, and now you want to convert your old Android project with to compose, then you have to manually add these two lines, these two features manually inside this build.gradle file. And also in the dependencies block where we actually put the external libraries, you see that many libraries like this Android X compose bomb, this activity compose, so these are automatically added for us. But if you do manually, if you have an existing Android project, now you want to migrate your old project to compose, then you have to add these lines manually in the build.gradle file. But thanks to this template that we have chosen, whenever we choose this template, the setup is done for us automatically. So now you know about something about composable functions, and composable functions actually takes in data. We can pass argument to a composable functions, and compose library will read this or call these functions for us and create the user interface on the basis of this function. So this through these composable functions, we are actually declaring something like how our user interface should look like. We are simply defining things, and then the compose library take all the responsibilities to render to the screen. So this is not our headache how compose actually renders, gathers all the information, and then create the output for us. All we have to do is we need to define composable functions, and we need to define how our user interfaces should look like, what text to print, what will be the font size, what will be the color. We provide this information through the composable functions, and the rest is done by the framework or library itself.